first thing you want to do is talk to other people and find other interested people that may want to do the same thing. And you guys come together and, say, okay, well, we want to invest in multifamily or even single family for that matter, right?
Because the management and transparency is what's very important. So once you submit a referral, you're going to have your own Home Advantage account, and it's going to tell you where everything sits. So if you have 10 referrals that you've sent into the network, it's going to give you all 10 referrals. It's going to tell you every milestone that client is sitting in, whether they're touring homes, whether they're in escrow. And you now can manage through the Home Advantage application as far as what your pipeline looks like for the referrals that you've sent. And so it's pretty sophisticated, and it's all click of a button, guys.
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I like to call it Wealth Wednesday. I am here with Rod Lockett, who actually just met a little while ago, and he is here to tell us about how you can tap into the equity in your home and why more people should be doing it. Rod, thanks for joining us. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Hi. My name is Rod Lockett. I am a general contractor by trade, and I'm also a real estate investor and multifamily syndicator. And basically what that means is syndicator, what we do is we put together investors and we look for multifamily properties to be able to be purchased and utilized as an investment vehicle.
That's awesome. How long have you been investing?
Oh, wow. In real estate in general, probably last 7 years. And in multifamily, about 2 years.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, one of the things that I'm super passionate about is teaching real estate agents how to invest in the thing they sell every day. So I'm glad you're here. And can you share with us why is it that people think that the biggest investment they will ever make is a car or a home?
Well, I mean, I grew up with like most people did, right? We had a traditional family, and my dad worked a lot, and my mom didn't work for a while until the economy changed, and so then we had to have two incomes coming in. So growing up, their biggest investment was a house, and then the car, of course, next. But we all know most cars depreciate in value. But they thought that putting their money and socking their money into a house would create a great living for themselves a little bit later on. That never materialized because they were never ever able to use the equity in their home to give themselves a better life. They just kept the money in the house, and they figured paying off the house was the best thing that they could do, right? That's what most people think. A house free and clear, you don't have to have a house note or anything like that, and then whatever money you make, you can live off that. But even that only gives you a certain amount of freedom. But if the equity in your house is actually paying you something on an annual basis, you have more money and more resources to be able to live a better life.
Yeah,
and that's what my
I would agree with that.
were able to do. They didn't take vacations, things of that nature. So, but the equity in your house can actually be used as an investment vehicle to be able to give you some money to have a better life.
So how would somebody go about doing that, right? Like I'm your perfect example. I have, I don't know, I'd say my mortgage is probably 20% of the value of my home. So I have a lot of equity in my home. How would one go about tapping into the equity in their home? What does that look like?
Okay, so the first thing you'd have to do is you'd have to arrange to take basically a second on your house, right? And what there's fees and stuff involved with that. But what you would do is, you would use that to invest in multifamily. And the benefits for investing in multifamily is that the equity in your house continues to grow over time, right? Because the value of your house is going to continue to go up. But the equity in your house, it only stays the same. You're not making money off that money. But if you're able to take that money out with a second and be able to use that money as an investment, you can double your money within 5 years.
Okay, but in the meantime, so in investing in multifamily, right? So if we take out a second on our home, we're making that monthly payment. So we need to make sure that that investment is at least well, we want it to cover more than just that monthly payment. What are you kind of finding, that looks like? Because I'm sure Like if that was something some of us went to talk to our clients about, they'd be like, what kind of a return should I expect on this side? That, and a lot of multifamily syndications that I have seen, you have to
Mhm.
be an accredited investor. Your typical homeowner generally is not an accredited investor. And if you could share a little bit about that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, you can also invest on another level. You don't have to be accredited. But let's say for instance, you and a few friends get together and you guys say, okay, well, listen, we want to invest $50,000, $100,000. We put in $10,000 or $20,000 each and become a corporation. You guys can invest as a corporation, and you don't have to actually individually be an accredited investor.
Okay. All right. And would you just share, I mean, you and I know what accredited investors are. Would you just let the audience know what that means?
Yeah, accredited investor is someone, so if you are a single person and you make over $200,000 a year, you're basically considered an accredited investor because at that level you have some experience with larger amount of funds, and you have some level of sophistication with you. The same thing goes for a couple. If a couple is or a married couple, basically is the household income is 300,000, that will actually make you an accredited investor as well. Or if your net worth, not including your primary home, is $1 million, then you are considered a accredited investor as well. It's just basically a accredited investor is someone who has experience with money and maybe some level of knowledge for investments as well.
Great. So also, okay, so we got 5 friends together and we're going to go invest in a multifamily. Can you kind of share a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, so if you don't have the money yourself and you're not an accredited investor and you want to put together funds, you guys can create an LLC, and as an LLC, that will be considered an entity, and you can use those funds to invest in a multifamily deal. As a syndicator, what we do is we put together investors and we look for deals, basically B and C multifamily properties. We try to push for 50 or more units to be able to pay everything and increase the value of the property over time. The LLC will be used basically as an entity. So you would come in as one of the investors, and as one of the investors, you would get the opportunity to get a portion of the equity and the value of that property, and you also get payments on a yearly basis as well.
Got it. Do you have any examples? Like, do you have anything? I know you and I chatted a little bit about before you were going to try to put some numbers together. Do you have anything you can run through?
Yeah, so got a couple notes here. So let's say, for instance, you're a homeowner, right? So instead of the entity, let's say you're an individual homeowner, and the value of your property is 500,000, right? And you have about $100,000 worth of equity in your home, right? Let's say you want to use that equity to invest in a multifamily deal. So you would go to a lender and you would say, okay, well, listen, I want to use some of the equity in my home to do an investment. So you'll go through the paperwork of getting not a home equity loan, but an actual second mortgage on your home. And you'll be able to use that money like an investment. So as $100,000, it'll cost you about 7% with fees and taxes and everything to be able to use that as an investment. So automatically you're down $7,000, right? That's what most people think in their head. But that $7,000 will actually be paid, because what we look for in multifamily is about a 7% return cash on cash value. And what cash on cash value means is that the money that you put in, we're going to work to get you 7% or more. It usually runs between 5 and 8%. But we're going to try and get you at least 7% on your money. So you're going to be able to take that, whatever you pay in payments, and be able to use that interest to compensate the money that you're paying for the loan that you're taking on your house, right?
Right.
So after that, so let's say you got $100,000 in a multifamily deal. That $100,000, what we look for in a property before we purchase it is the ability to raise the value of that property using capital investments, right? So I'm sure you know what capital investments are, but for our audience, capital investments, capital improvements actually, is what we do to improve the property to increase the value of the property. So the money that we get from rents, that money, anything that goes beyond paying the debt service of the loan goes towards paying our investors as well as capital improvements. And capital improvements can be something as simple as doing some landscaping, painting, siding, things of that nature, right? So once that's done, there's a little bit left over that goes to the investors. That's the 7% that I was referring to earlier, right? So over time, you continue to do capital improvements, the value of that property grows. And we look for investments that will allow that property to grow or double its money within 5 to 7 years. That's the actual term that we look for in a structure. So over time, that $100,000 that you put in at the end of 5 years will be worth $200,000. Now, if you take away all the fees and stuff that you're not going to be able to cover from the cash on cash returns of 7% that I mentioned earlier, then you're still going to come out with about my numbers are at $77,000 in addition to the additional value that your house is going to continue to get as it grows in equity over the next 5 years, right? So that same $500,000 house, if it increases about 6% every year, at the end of 5 years, that house is going to be worth about $670,000, right? So if you subtract that $100,000 that you took out to invest in your property, that's going to bring you at $569,000, right? But if you add that $100,000 that you invested plus the $77,000 that you invested, your property value is actually up at about 300 and let's see here, about $350,000 as opposed to just $169,000. So you're almost doubling your equity and value from the money that you have by taking money out of your house, even if you have to pay an extra second mortgage for a while, that's eventually going to be covered by the cash on cash returns that you get from the property. So you're basically working to double your profits on the equity in your home.
Are you finding?
Confuse you.
Yeah, well, I got it. So if anybody's got any questions, please drop them in the chat. So I guess all the hoopla right now is that interest rates are at historic highs. Are you finding deals where someone were to take out a second mortgage? And so number one, they'll take out that second mortgage and that money, that $100,000 investment that you talked about is tied up for 5 to 7 years.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's number one. And then my other one would be, are you finding anything where, someone can take out a second mortgage and it makes sense because their cash on cash return is going to be higher?
Yeah. So the points on the loan that you're more or less what you're referring to and how that ends up being a positive. That's what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to, like you talked about, a 7% return.
Cash on cash return, yes.
Cash on cash returns. And so right now, if we've got interest rates and someone's taken out, I don't even know what interest rates are on a second mortgage. I have no idea. But say it's 7% and they're looking at 7% cash on cash return. Why would somebody still do that?
We mean, why would they take a second on their house? Because the interest rates are so high? Because the long-term value of the investment strategy for the multifamily is going to yield you way more returns than the amount of interest that you're paying on taking out that second mortgage. And that includes your monthly payments. So the way multifamily works in syndication is that we'll be able to return your cash on cash returns, your 7%, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. It just depends on the structure of the deal, and every property is different. So it just depends. But at the end of the day, you should get 7% return, around 7%, between 5 to 8%. We say 7% because that's what we shoot for. Return on your money over the course of a year. Now, those payments that you paid for your loan will be substantiated by the cash on cash return that you get. So you're not really losing money on what you're paying for the loan. And over time, that 100,000 is going to double because of the value of the property is going to double. We refinance or we sell the property and we return you your capital plus your investment back.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Make sense?
Yep. Oh, I understand. I just want
I know
everybody else
you
to
understand,
understand.
but I just want to make sure the audience understand, because you can get lost in the numbers if you don't really if you're not familiar with the terms. But I'd like to make sure that everybody understands where this goes,
Yeah.
because it can get complicated.
Yeah. And just to kind of go back to something that you talked about, capital improvements, it's also they're looking for value add properties. They're looking for properties they can add value to and push the after repair value on the ARV.
That's correct.
All right, let's see what else. I know because I'm going through my questions. May have already answered this, but how can you build yeah, you may have already answered this, but anyway, how can you build investment capital if you've got 50,000 or less to invest?
Okay, so I mentioned that I also I invest in single family properties. So I'm a contractor, general contractor, and what I do is I work to renovate homes. I also invest in single family homes myself with partners and with investors, and through that, my investors will give me a certain amount of money to invest in a house, and we'll negotiate the terms as far as what they'll get on their returns. Some they'll get monthly payments, some will get just a cash on cash return at the end of the investment. So we go out and we find these deals and we invest in them, we renovate them, we sell them, and we pay our investors back. And that can be as small as, $5,000 or $10,000, but you have to join that with other funds to get a larger amount to be able to invest in these properties. But you can start from very little and raise your money in, 6 months or a year, depending on how aggressive you want to be in these types of investments. So that's one way that people can take a small amount of money and start to build to get to a point where you can invest in these multifamily deals, which most syndicators like myself, we look for patrons or investors that would want to invest $50,000 or more. And it depends on the property. Sometimes we'll cap it at $100,000 minimum. I know other syndicators, they cap because of the value and the experience they have, they cap it at $200,000, but these are much larger investments. We're talking about multifamily properties that are $50 million or more, so the capital raise is a lot more stringent there.
Yeah. About what size multifamilies do you look for? Like, do you have a minimum number of units to where it makes sense? Like, I know I have a client that they won't look at anything that's not over 80 units. Do you have like a minimum number, and why is that? Why would that make more sense?
Well, I would say the minimum number is somewhere around 35 to 50 units. And the reason why I say that is because anything lower than that, then you're not making enough money from the residual aspects of the rents and the income to be able to hire a management and on-site maintenance crew. And there's always going to be things that happen. You're always going to have to deal with your tenants, and you can't do that by yourself when you're not making enough money to do it. So minimum is, right around the 35 mark. And maximum really is just, it only depends on the amount of money that we're able to raise for the investment.
Gotcha. About how long does it take to raise money for a syndication? About how long, and that may be a loaded question, I don't mean it to be, but about how long do you think, like, okay, so you find a property, so tell us your steps. You find a property, you put it under contract, like, what does that look like?
Okay, so how this goes is that we vet our investors first, basically, right? And we find out what their interests are, and we'll tell them what we're up to. Okay, so say for instance, you're an investor and you have $100,000 you want to invest, right? Okay, what we'll do is we'll vet you. We'll make sure that you're an accredited investor, and if you're not, how you can utilize your funds to be able to invest with us, right? Once we say okay, then we say we'll circle back with you when there's a property available that we think you'll be interested in, and then you'll make the decision there. And so it's a common rule in real estate and multifamily that you want to get at least 2 to 3 times the amount of investors that you need, because things change. If I talk to you today and 3 months from now, something changes with you financially, well, when I call you 3 months from now, you won't be able to invest in that deal. So I would have to have a backup. So that's the first step, is to find the investors and find out what they want to invest in these type of vehicles, right? The next step is to find the property, right? Of course, you have your team ready, and your team is looking for properties and, finding out all the angles. So say we found a property that's ready for investment. Then we reach out to investors. We say, listen, this is what we're going to go for. Do you want to get on board? And you say yes, yes or no, whatever, right? And so what we'll do is we'll go to the bank and we'll say, okay, we have the money, we vetted the property, we've talked to the owners, we're ready to do this deal. And, it goes through all the paperwork and stuff to do the deal. So let's say the deal is done. What happens then is that we start looking at ways to improve the efficiency of the property, meaning that maybe there's management staff that was somebody's uncle or cousin and they're not really doing anything, but, they're on the property. Well, we kind of have to trim the fat, unfortunately, in a situation like that, unless that person creates and produces value within the property, then we will keep them on, right? There's ways to find out if some of the maintenance issues on the property can be worked on. And then as far as the apartment turnovers, we try to increase value with that as well. We'll modernize apartments, and then we'll be able to charge higher rents. So it's a lot of things that we start looking for immediately, actually before we actually start the process of buying a property. We find out exactly what we need to put into the property to gain value in it before we purchase it. So once we get into the property, we just go full steam on that, wherever the amounts of the rents will allow us to do, and also allow us to return investments to investors at the 7% or whatever we agree on. As far as the rents are concerned. So once that's done, that process continues for several years until we get the value of the property and the rents of the property up to a certain point where we feel that we can either refinance the property or sell it. And that's usually between 5 to 7 years from purchase.
You mentioned going to the bank. So are you not raising all your capital for the purchase? Are you just raising the capital as like your down payment, or are you raising the capital as like rehab funds? What, can you clarify that a bit?
The capital raise is for the down payment of the apartments, of the multifamily units. It doesn't make sense to raise 100% of the capital. So we always use banks. We'll go to the bank and we'll say, okay, well, we have 25% down, or we have 30% down, or whatever the case. It depends on the climate, and what the terms are that the bank is offering at the time. So, let's say, for instance, we need 20% on, or 25% on a $10 million property. So we need to raise $2.5 million to be able to put down that down payment. So we could have an investor at 100,000. We could have one at 500,000. There's different levels of what people will have available to them. So once we get all the paperwork approved, and investors have put their money into the accounts, then we're off to the races.
And then, so your money to do then your capital expenditures, or to do your capital improvements, where does that money come from?
That money comes from the rents. Okay, so let's say, for instance, on a $10 million property, we're collecting our gross income from the rents, and that includes people who are not paying their rent, and in the process of moving or being evicted. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a part of it as well.
Yes, it is.
Let's say we're getting this is not an accurate number, but just for multiplication, let's just say we're getting $20,000 per month for the rents and stuff like that, right? It would actually be more than that, but let's just say 20,000, right? That $20,000, part of that goes to servicing the debt, which is paying the bank back their money for the loan. And let's say out of that $20,000, $5,000 left over, right? We will use a portion of that to improve projects, right? And we'll select projects depending on the time of the year and what needs to be done, right? So let's say that that $5,000 that's left over will go to some landscaping for that month, right? Or that $5,000 will go to improving a specific apartment that we can raise the rent several $100s after we renovate it. So that's where the capital improvement goes. And then, some of that money as well is put away for the investors, so we can pay them on a quarterly, semi-annually, or annually basis.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes total sense. Jake, do we have any questions from anybody? I'm not in the Facebook group, so I don't know if we've got any questions from anybody anywhere. None yet. Okay. Well, do you have a question? No.
No, I mean, that's primarily what we do. I've actually interestingly been invited to work with a multifamily company, and they don't know that I'm investing in multifamily myself, but as a construction company, they've asked me to do some work for them. So it's been interesting to see how management companies actually behave towards the tenants and the vendors, such as myself, when doing some of the work on multifamily properties. So it's an interesting perspective. So I'm getting, income from that, but I'm also learning how other property management companies work with vendors. In this property management company, they have about 70 multifamily properties under their belt. And so they're a larger property management company. So the way that they behave is much different than the actual independent owner. And so that's been a pretty interesting ride, So
What are some, if you would mind sharing, in your opinion, what are some of the better markets right now to get into in terms of investing in the multifamily space?
Oh, multifamily, there's tons of them. So we're looking at parts in Texas. We're looking at the Carolinas, both North and South Carolina. We're also looking at the northern Florida area. Southern Florida is very saturated.
Yeah.
But we're looking into northern Florida. We're also looking into Denver as well, and Las Vegas. The Las Vegas area, there's a lot of things happening over there as well. So there's different markets around the country that are really interesting for multifamily and what the promise is for future investments.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Well, I think we're wrapping up. I'm keeping an eye on the time. We're kind of starting to wrap up. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, which would be the best way for them to get a hold of you if you want to learn more about tapping into the equity in their homes, or investing in multifamily?
They can go directly to my website and book a free 30-minute call with me. And that website is invest4lt.com, and I'll put that in the chat. So if they want to book a call with me, it's a 30-minute call. I can kind of get an idea of what they're interested in and what they are working with, and I can kind of direct them to a way that they can get involved in multifamily.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm trying to think. We still have a couple more minutes. I can't think of any more questions because I think you've answered them all for me. Any last tidbit or words of wisdom?
I would say, say there's someone who wants to get into multifamily that they don't have enough money. I would say, the first thing you want to do is talk to other people and find other interested people that may want to do the same thing. And you guys come together and, say, okay, well, we want to invest in multifamily or even single family for that matter, right? And just put your money together, pool it with someone else that, are like-minded as you, and you guys want to do a little bit more with the resources that you have. There's no reason why you need to do it all alone. And I've come into that with a couple of times with when I started learning multifamily a few years ago. There were people who came into the business and thought that they could do it all by themselves. It's just too much work. There's no way one person or even two people could do something like that. It's just a massive, massive amount of work. And so you want to learn how to partner with people maybe at an early stage to be able to get into multifamily or even single family investing for that matter.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And get out there. I'm big on building relationships, and just start building those relationships and make sure that you all have the same vision, and have the same goals. And God, one of my old brokers said many, many years ago, when people were trying to build teams, plan for the divorce ahead of time, right? And just make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. You have put everything in writing, so everybody knows up front from day one who's responsible for doing what, who's in charge of what. If things go wrong, how's that going to dissolve, if it comes to that point. Because you may think that you guys are great partners right now and find out, 6 months, a year down the line, that maybe y'all aren't on the same page. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Yeah. Maybe people's strategies have changed, or, situations have changed. But I think this has been fabulous, because I don't think, a lot of real estate agents or a lot of people in lab coats really understand a whole lot about multifamily. I know I've looked into it, but I've not done anything. So this was wonderful. Rod, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, go hit up Rod at invest4lt.com. And thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, one last thing, if you don't mind, just, the whole reason why people invest in multifamily properties is for passive income. You want the ability to make money when you're not doing anything. The ability to have money coming in on a monthly basis or quarterly basis is why multifamily is so special. That money that you have sitting in your house and not doing anything, if it's able to pay you a certain amount every year without you having to do anything, you can take vacations. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that without having to work an hourly job or something like that to do it.
Yeah, or worry about living paycheck to paycheck as a real estate agent and waiting on that commission check to happen.
Absolutely. Financial freedom.
100%.
There you go.
Awesome. Right. Thanks, Rod. I appreciate it. I think we are up on time. So everybody, thanks for joining us. And I will see you in the group.
Pleasure. Take care.
You too.